Imagine, a German soldier in a trench receives a letter from home. In it, his mother asks how things are at the front. But how can he tell her about the nightmare that haunts him every day? How can he explain that he, a battle-hardened warrior, is being killed by girls barely 20 years old? Soviet female snipers became a phenomenon unprecedented in world history. More than 2,000 girls took up rifles and became an invisible terror for the invaders. Their combined combat record exceeded 12,000 enemies killed. Today, we will tell the story of these amazing women who defended their homeland with weapons in their hands and became legends for future generations. In secret Wehrmacht documents, they were called the Invisible Terror. German soldiers, hardened by battles across Europe, felt an almost mystical fear of them. We are talking about Soviet female snipers, a phenomenon unknown to any army in the world before the Great Patriotic War. Imagine a German infantryman somewhere near Stalingrad in the fall of 1942. He has already crossed half of Europe, seen his comrades march through Paris, and witnessed the fall of Warsaw and Kiev. But here, on Russian soil, he is haunted by a completely different fear. It is not fear of tanks or artillery. It is fear of an invisible death that can overtake him at any moment. In the morning, he peeks out of the trench. Silence. At noon, he sticks his helmet out on his bayonet. No one shoots at it. But in the evening, his comrade next to him suddenly falls with a bullet through his head. No shot is heard. Where the shot came from is unknown. Who fired it is even more of a mystery. And the most terrifying thing for a German is that it could have been a woman. Hitler's propaganda portrayed Russian women as submissive housewives incapable of resistance. But the reality was quite different. In the first months of the war, the Germans realized that they were fighting not only men, but also women. And they fought just as well, sometimes even better. The first female snipers appeared spontaneously in the People's Militia and Partisan detachments. But soon the Soviet command realized that this was not a coincidence, but a pattern. Women possessed qualities that made them ideal snipers: patience, endurance, and the ability to observe for long periods of time. By the middle of 1943, there were more than 2,000 female snipers fighting in the Red Army. Each of them had undergone special training and was a master of her craft. Their combined combat record exceeded 12,000 enemy soldiers and officers killed. But numbers are just cold statistics. Behind each of them was a living girl with her own destiny, her own dreams, her own pain. 19-year-old students, 25-year-old mothers, 40-year-old teachers, all of them took up rifles to defend their homeland. The Germans quickly realized that they were not dealing with ordinary soldiers. Female snipers fought in a special way. They were more cautious, more patient, and more inventive in their camouflage. One shot could cost the life of an entire platoon if it signaled the start of an attack. The fear of female snipers was so strong that it gave rise to many myths and legends in the German trenches. There were stories of ghost girls who could shoot through walls, and of werewolf women who took the form of nurses. Of course, these were just figments of a fear-ridden imagination. But the very fact that such stories emerged speaks volumes. The reality was both simpler and more terrifying than the myths. Soviet female snipers were ordinary people, but they possessed iron will, excellent training, and deadly accuracy. Each of them knew that they could not afford to miss. A miss meant not only the loss of the target, but also their own death. The German command issued special instructions on how to deal with Soviet snipers. But when it came to women, the tone of the documents changed. Words such as special danger, increased caution, and immediate destruction appeared. Female snipers were feared more than men, and this fear was justified. Statistics showed that, on average, female snipers were more effective than their male counterparts. They were less likely to reveal themselves, stayed in position longer, and shot more accurately. Their average combat score was higher. Thus began a story that forever changed the perception of war. a story about how Soviet women became an invisible terror for the invaders and how this terror led to one of the most significant phenomena of the Great Patriotic War. On June 22, 1941, war broke out in the lives of millions of Soviet people. And among those who heard the call, "Arise, vast country," there were not only men. Thousands of women flocked to military registration offices, eager to sign up as volunteers. At first, they were met with skepticism. "War is not a woman's business," said the military commissars. They were offered jobs as nurses, signalers, and workers in the rear. But many girls insisted, "Give us rifles. We can shoot as well as men." And it was true. In the Soviet Union of the 1930s, there was a developed system of military and sports training for young people. The Society for the Assistance of Defense, Aviation and Chemical Construction, Osoaviakim, trained millions of citizens in shooting. Among them were many girls, and many of them were excellent shots. Lyudmila Pavlichenko, who would become the most successful female sniper in history, was a member of a shooting club in her school years. When the war began, she was working at a factory in Kiev. Upon learning of the German attack, she immediately went to the military registration office. "I came as a volunteer," Ludmila Mikhailovna later recalled. "They offered me to become a nurse. I replied, 'I can shoot. Give me a rifle.'" The military commissar hesitated for a long time, but in the end he enlisted the 25-year-old girl as a private rifleman. There were thousands like Lyudmila. Zinaida Portnova, future hero of the Soviet Union, was in 10th grade when the war began. But she was already an excellent marksman, having trained in the school shooting club. When the war began, she did not hesitate to join the partisans. Nina Petrova, who was already 48 years old at the start of the war, had many years of experience as a shooting instructor. In 1936, she trained 102 Voroshilov marksmen. When the war broke out, she immediately volunteered to go to the front as a sniper. Maria Polivanova worked in a factory in Moscow before the war, but in her free time, she attended a shooting club and was one of the best shooters in the area. Upon hearing about the war, she immediately applied to join the army. Natalya Kovshova was studying at university when the war began. The girl from Ufa had been fond of hunting with her father since childhood. She was an excellent shot and knew the habits of wild animals. These skills came in handy in the war, where the most dangerous enemy was man. The first months of the war showed that women could indeed be effective snipers. Moreover, they had a number of advantages. Women were more patient and could lie motionless in ambush for hours, waiting for their target to appear. They were less impulsive and less likely to give away their position through careless actions. In addition, women proved to be more inventive in camouflage. They had a better eye for detail and were quicker to find ways to blend in with their surroundings. Their smaller size and weight allowed them to take up positions that were inaccessible to men. But most importantly, female snipers had a special motivation. It was not just about defending their homeland, it was about protecting their children, their homes, and their future. Many of them had seen the atrocities of the occupiers with their own eyes, and this gave them the strength to seek revenge. Klavdia Kalugina arrived at the front as a 17-year-old girl. Her home in the Bryansk region had been burned down by the Germans, and her parents had been killed. The girl joined a partisan detachment with one desire: revenge. And she took revenge with precision and ruthlessness. Gradually, it became clear that female snipers were not a coincidence but a pattern. They needed to be specially trained and provided with special training conditions. In 1942, a decision was made to create the first female sniper courses. But even before they were established, female snipers were already fighting on all fronts. They covered the retreat in the first difficult months of the war, participated in the defense of Moscow, and held the defense of Leningrad. There were still few of them, but each of them was worth a whole platoon of ordinary riflemen. At first, the Germans did not understand what they were facing. Accustomed to the European theater of war, where women did not participate in combat, They were shocked. The first reports of women with rifles were met with disbelief in Berlin headquarters. But soon the doubts were dispelled. Casualties among German officers and snipers began to rise. Analysis showed that many of them had been killed by women. This was something new that the Wehrmacht had never encountered before. Thus began the history of the mass participation of Soviet women in sniper warfare. A history that would show the whole world what a woman is capable of when defending her land and her loved ones. By the spring of 1943, it was clear that female snipers were a serious military force that needed systematic training. The first months of the war showed their high effectiveness, but also revealed problems. Many girls died due to insufficient tactical training. On May 21, 1943, the People's Commissariat of Defense of the USSR issued an order to establish a central women's sniper training school. It was located in Podolsk, near Moscow, at the Vystrel Training Center. It was the world's first specialized training center for female snipers. Selection for the school was rigorous. The requirements for candidates were extremely high. Age up to 25, at least 7 years of education, excellent eyesight, and physical endurance. But the most important thing was psychological stability and the ability to kill. The commission carefully studied each candidate. They checked not only their shooting skills, but also their character, motivation, and family circumstances. They tried not to take girls with small children. War is war, and no one could guarantee their return home. Nina Lubkovskaya passed the selection process in December 1942. She was 19 years old and worked as a draftswoman at a defense plant in Tula. They asked me if I was ready to kill, she later recalled. I replied that I was ready to avenge my brothers who had died near Moscow. Training at the school lasted from 3 to 6 months, depending on the level of preparation of the cadets. The program was intense and multifaceted. The girls were taught not only how to shoot, but also how to survive in the most difficult conditions. The morning began at 5 o'clock with physical training, running, pull-ups, endurance exercises. Many of the girls had never done any serious sports, and the first few weeks were a real challenge for them. But no one complained. Everyone understood that their lives could depend on their physical fitness. After breakfast, theoretical training began. Ballistics, weaponry, sniper tactics. The girls studied the features of various rifles, learned to calculate wind and temperature corrections, and mastered the art of determining the range to the target. Special attention was paid to studying the enemy. The cadets were told about the organization of the German army, insignia, and tactics. They had to be able to determine at first glance whether the person in front of them was a simple soldier or an officer, a signalman, or a sniper. Practical shooting took place every day, first at targets in the shooting range, then in the field at targets that appeared and moved. The requirements were strict. 9 out of 10 shots had to hit the target. Those who failed were expelled. Aliya Moldagulova, future hero of the Soviet Union, came to the school as an 18-year-old girl from the Kazakh steppe. She had never seen modern weapons, but she had phenomenal eyesight and a steady hand. After just 1 month of training, she was shooting better than many of the instructors. But shooting was only part of the program. The girls were taught camouflage. It was a real art form. They had to be able to blend into any terrain and become invisible to the enemy. They lay in the bushes for hours, learning not to move, not to blink, to endure pain and discomfort. Tatiana Baramzina was particularly skilled at the art of camouflage. The fragile girl could disguise herself so well in the grass that even instructors passing a few feet away did not notice her. These skills saved her life on the front lines more than once. The cadets also studied the psychology of war. They were told that a sniper is not just a skilled marksman, but a psychological weapon. A single good sniper can demoralize an entire enemy battalion. Therefore, every shot must be well thought out, and every kill must be as effective as possible. A special section was devoted to topography and orientation. Female snipers often operated alone or in small groups behind enemy lines. They had to be able to read maps, navigate by the stars, and find their way in any conditions. Medical training was also part of the program. The girls were taught to provide first aid to themselves and their comrades, stop bleeding, and apply bandages. Medical assistance was not always available at the front, and this knowledge saved lives. By the end of their training, the school produced true professionals. Each graduate could hit a target at a distance of up to 800 meters and was a master of camouflage and survival. But most importantly, they had iron will and a willingness to go to the end. In total, over 1,000 female snipers and more than 400 instructors were trained during the school's existence. Many of them became legends, their names going down in history. But each of them remembered the lessons of the school near Moscow, where girls were turned into deadly weapons of war. The graduation ceremony was solemn. The girls received sniper rifles and swore allegiance to their homeland. Many cried. They understood that their childhood was over forever. War lay ahead, and not all of them would return home. She was called by many names: Lady Death, Queen of Snipers, the terror of the fascists. But to her comrades in arms, she was simply Mila, a modest girl who became the most successful female sniper in human history. Lyudmila Mikhailovna Pavlichenko, a name that struck fear into the hearts of German soldiers. Lyudmila was born on July 12, 1916, in the city of Bila Tserkva in Ukraine. Her childhood was typical for a Soviet girl in the 1930s. She went to school, attended the Osovihim shooting club, and worked at a factory. Nothing foreshadowed that this fragile girl would go down in history as the greatest sniper. When the war began on June 22, 1941, Lyudmila was 25 years old. She worked at the 61st Commune shipyard in Nikolaev. Upon hearing about the German invasion, she did not hesitate for a second. She went straight from the factory to the military registration office. "Give me a rifle," she said to the military commissar. He suggested that she become a nurse, but Lyudmila insisted on her choice. She was an excellent marksman, had a Voroshilov marksman badge, and believed that she could be more useful with a weapon in her hands than with a medical bag. She was enlisted as a private riflewoman in the 25th Chapayev Rifle Division. At first, the commanders were skeptical. What could a woman do in war? But the very first battle dispelled all doubts. Lyudmila calmly and accurately shot 2 German soldiers. Thus began her career as a sniper. The first weeks on the front were difficult. Lyudmila participated in the defense of Odessa, one of the bloodiest operations of the early period of the war. The enemy outnumbered the Soviet troops in both manpower and equipment. Every day brought heavy losses. But it was in these conditions that Lyudmila's talent as a sniper was revealed. She quickly realized that it was not the number of shots that mattered, but their quality. Each target had to be studied, and the moment when the probability of hitting it was highest had to be chosen. A miss could cost not only her life, but also the lives of her comrades. Her first major success was the elimination of a German sniper who had been terrorizing Soviet positions for several days. Lyudmila tracked him for 2 days, studying his habits and the places from which he fired. And when he appeared again, she sent the enemy to his grave with a single shot. The fame of the sharpshooter quickly spread throughout the division. The command began to give her special assignments: the elimination of enemy snipers, officers, and fire correctors. With each passing day, her combat record grew. By the end of the defense of Odessa, she had already killed 54 enemies. After Odessa, the division was transferred to Sevastopol. Here, Lyudmila was to spend the most difficult months of her military service. The siege of the city lasted 250 days, and every day was a battle for survival. In Sevastopol, Lyudmila finally established herself as a top-class sniper. She studied the habits of German soldiers, knew their daily routine, and understood their psychology. Her shots became truly surgical. She could hit a target at a distance of up to 800 meters. The Germans declared a real hunt for her. A reward was offered for her head. The best snipers of the Wehrmacht were sent against her, but all attempts were in vain. Lyudmila was not only an excellent marksman, but also a master of camouflage and tactics. She particularly remembered a duel with a German sniper who had been hunting her for 3 days. The enemy was experienced, cautious, and an excellent shot. But Lyudmila surpassed him in patience. She waited 4 hours for the right moment, without moving, and finally ended the confrontation with a single shot. During the defense of Sevastopol, her combat record grew to 250 enemy kills. Among them were 36 snipers, a figure that speaks for itself. Each enemy sniper meant dozens of Soviet soldiers' lives saved. In June 1942, Lyudmila was seriously wounded by shrapnel. Doctors fought for her life for a long time. When the danger had passed, it became clear that she would not return to the front. But her military service did not end there. By decision of the Soviet leadership, Lyudmila was sent as part of a delegation to the United States and Canada. The purpose of the trip was simple: to show Western allies that the Soviet Union was fighting a real war in which even women were participating. In America, she caused a sensation. The Western press was stunned. A young woman who had killed 309 people. She was invited to appear on the radio, interviewed, and photographed. Lyudmila behaved with dignity, telling the truth about the war. Her speech in Chicago became the most famous. "Gentlemen, I am 25 years old. At the front, I have already managed to destroy 309 fascist invaders. Don't you think, gentlemen, that you have been hiding behind my back for too long?" The hall erupted in applause. After returning to her homeland, Lyudmila became an instructor at the Vistral Sniper School. She passed on her experience to a new generation of shooters and trained snipers for the front. During her time as an instructor, she trained dozens of excellent specialists. The war ended, but Lyudmila continued to serve. She graduated from the History Department of Kyiv University and worked for the War Veterans Committee. She remained a modest person until the end of her life and did not like to talk about the war. Lyudmila Mikhailovna Pavlichenko died on October 27, 1974. Her name is inscribed in gold letters in the history of the Great Patriotic War. 309 victories is a record that remains unbroken to this day. The war brought them together, 2 girls from different cities, with different destinies, but united by one goal: to defend their homeland.
Maria Polivanova and Natalya Kovshova went down in history as inseparable friends who lived, fought, and died together, becoming a symbol of female friendship in war. Maria Semenovna Polivanova was born in Moscow in 1922.
Before the war, she worked in a factory and spent her free time shooting at the local Osoviakim club. When the war began, she was not yet 20 years old, but she had enough determination for 3 people. Natalia Venediktovna Kovshova was 2 years older. She was born in Ufa, studied at an institute, and was fond of hunting. Her father taught her to shoot when she was a child, and by the beginning of the war, she was an excellent marksman. Upon hearing about the German invasion, she dropped out of school and went to the military registration and enlistment office. They met in the training unit, where they were undergoing basic training. From the very first days, a strong friendship developed between the girls. They complemented each other. Masha was more emotional and impulsive, while Natasha was calm and level-headed. Together, they made an ideal sniper pair. After training, they were sent to the Northwestern Front, to the 388th Rifle Regiment. It was the summer of 1941, when the front had just stabilized after the first difficult months of the war. At first, the commanders did not know what to do with 2 female snipers. But their doubts were dispelled after their first sortie. Working in unison, Maria and Natalya killed 7 German soldiers in a single day. It became clear that this pair was worth a whole platoon of ordinary riflemen. The girls developed their own tactics. They worked in pairs, covering each other. While one shot, the other observed, adjusted the fire, and monitored safety. After firing, they quickly changed positions, preventing the enemy from detecting them. Their favorite tactic was to use false positions. The girls created the appearance of a sniper's nest in one place, while they were located in a completely different place. The Germans fired at the false target, revealing their positions, while Maria and Natalya calmly destroyed them. In 6 months of fighting, their combined tally reached 300 enemy kills. Maria killed 191 German soldiers and officers, while Natalya killed 167. But the numbers did not reflect the main thing, the terror they instilled in the enemy. The Germans quickly realized that they were dealing with exceptional opponents. Leaflets with their photos and captions were found at their positions. Wanted, special reward for their heads. But all attempts by the Germans to destroy the sniper duo were in vain. The girls became legends not only among Soviet troops, but also among the enemy. Stories were told about them. They were feared and respected. Even German snipers acknowledged the professionalism of the Russian girls, who surpassed many male shooters. But war is war, and luck cannot last forever. On August 14, 1942, the friends were assigned to cover the retreat of their unit in the area of the village of Sutoki in the Novgorod region. The position was unfavorable, but there was no other way out. The Germans were advancing with superior forces, and someone had to delay their advance. Maria and Natalya took up defensive positions on a hill overlooking the road. The battle began at dawn. The girls methodically shot the advancing Germans, forcing them to lie down. Every bullet hit its target. Every shot brought results. But they were running out of ammunition, and the enemy kept coming. By noon, it was clear that they could not hold their position. The Germans had flanked the hill and began to surround them. The retreat route was cut off. Maria and Natalya found themselves trapped with only one way out. When they ran out of ammunition, the girls grabbed their grenades. They knew that they would not be taken prisoner alive. Too many German soldiers lay in front of their position, and their names were too well known. Capture would mean torture and a painful death. The Germans were approaching, surrounding the position. They could have surrendered, raised their hands, and hoped for mercy from the enemy. But Maria and Natalya made a different choice. They embraced, said their last words to each other, and detonated their grenades. The explosion rocked the ground as the German soldiers were just a few meters away. Several Nazis were killed by shrapnel, and the rest were wounded. But most importantly, the 2 Soviet girls did not allow themselves to be taken alive and preserved their honor to the end. Their bodies were found by Soviet scouts a few days later, when the front line had receded. The girls lay embracing each other next to the torn grenades. Empty shell casings lay on the ground, evidence of the last battle. The feat of Maria Polivanova and Natalya Kovshova shook the entire army. 2 20-year-old girls showed an example of courage and self-sacrifice. They were posthumously awarded the title of Hero of the Soviet Union. Their names became a symbol of female friendship in war. Poems were written about them, songs were composed, and their feat was studied in military schools. Maria and Natalya proved that women can be not only good marksmen, but also true warriors, ready to die for their homeland. The story of the friendship between these 2 female snipers became one of the most vivid pages of the Great Patriotic War. They lived as friends, fought like lionesses, and died as heroes, leaving their names in history forever. They called themselves silent hunters. Unlike male snipers, women rarely boasted about their victories or competed to see who could kill the most enemies. They worked methodically and professionally, turning war into a deadly game of hide-and-seek, where life was at stake. Female snipers had special advantages that made them exceptionally effective. First and foremost was patience. Where a man might lose his nerve after a long wait, a woman could lie motionless for hours waiting for a single chance to take the decisive shot. Claudia Kalugina, who arrived at the front as a 17-year-old girl, recalled, "I could lie in ambush from dawn to dusk without moving. Men can't do that. They have a different character. They need to act. A woman can wait, like a spider in its web." The second advantage was attention to detail. Women noticed things that escaped the male gaze. Changes in bird behavior, unusual shadows, a branch lying incorrectly. These little things often saved their lives and helped them detect the enemy. Zoya Medvedeva, who fought near Leningrad, developed her own observation system. She studied the habits of birds and used their behavior to determine where the enemy was hiding. "Crows never sit near a living person," she said, "but jackdaws are not afraid of the dead." Camouflage was a real art for women. They used not only standard military techniques, but also female intuition and a sense of harmony. Inna Mudretsova could blend in with the autumn leaves so well that even her own comrades did not notice her. Female snipers attached particular importance to studying the enemy. They knew the daily routine in the German trenches, the habits of individual soldiers, and the weak points in the defenses. This information was more valuable than gold. It allowed them to select the most important targets. Nina Petrova, the oldest female sniper, drew on her rich life experience. "I knew people," she said. "I could tell by their gait whether it was an officer or a soldier, an experienced warrior or a novice. This helped me choose my targets." Female snipers preferred to work alone or in small groups. They did not like large crowds, noise, or commotion. Their element was silence, solitude, and concentration. In such conditions, they were deadly dangerous. The tactics of the silent hunters were radically different from those of their male counterparts. While male snipers often worked on the fly, shooting at any target that appeared, women were more selective. Each shot was planned in advance, and each target was carefully studied. Lyudmila Pavlichenko developed her own classification of targets by importance. First on the list were enemy snipers and officers. Next were signalers, spotters, and machine gunners. She only shot ordinary soldiers when there were no more important targets. Special tactics were used when hunting enemy snipers. It was a game of wits, where the winner was not the most accurate but the most intelligent. Women proved to be masters of this type of hunting. They could spend hours studying the enemy, identifying their habits and weaknesses. Rosa Shanina developed the false trail method. She deliberately left signs of her presence in one place, forcing the enemy sniper to focus their attention there while she positioned herself in a completely different location. In this way, she eliminated several experienced German marksmen. Female snipers were masters of psychological warfare. They understood that their task was not only to kill enemies, but also to demoralize the enemy. One well-placed shot could keep an entire unit from leaving their cover for weeks. Olga Vasilyeva deliberately chose moments when she was seen by the maximum number of German soldiers to shoot. A bullet that killed a comrade in front of everyone had a much stronger psychological effect than the silent disappearance of a sentry in the dark. The women paid particular attention to keeping their positions secret. After each shot, they always changed their location, not allowing the enemy to spot them. This required additional effort, but it guaranteed survival. Many female snipers used non-standard weapons and ammunition. They experimented with different types of bullets, modified rifles, and created their own silencers. Some of their designs were later adopted by the entire army. Zinaida Portnova created an improvised silencer from materials at hand, which reduced the sound of the shot to a minimum. This allowed her to work at close range from the enemy while remaining undetected. The silent hunters were not only masters of their craft, but also teachers. Many of them trained new snipers, passing on their accumulated experience. Their methods were used in sniper schools after the war. These women proved that the art of sniping is not only about shooting accuracy, but also about intelligence, patience, and psychology. In these qualities, they were not inferior to men and often surpassed them, becoming unsurpassed masters of silent hunting. Oberleutnant Walter Kramer left the following entry in his diary. For the third day, we have been unable to leave the dugout. A Russian female sniper is somewhere nearby. 4 of our men have already been shot in the head. The soldiers refuse to stand guard, saying they would rather face a tribunal than die at the hands of a woman. German snipers admitted that hunting Soviet female snipers was the most difficult task. Non-commissioned officer Kurt Hoffman, who had killed 73 enemies, wrote, "Russian women shoot as well as men, but they fight differently. They are more cautious, make fewer mistakes, and never rush." The Germans were particularly terrified by the accuracy of Soviet female snipers. While male snipers sometimes missed or wounded their targets, women shot to kill. Their shots were fatal, in 90% of cases. This meant that hearing a bullet whistling from a female sniper was practically a death sentence. Captain Erich Weber reported in a letter to his command, "Losses from sniper fire have tripled with the appearance of enemy female sniper units. Soldiers are demanding transfers to other units. Morale is critically low." The Germans tried to combat their fear in various ways. Leaflets were published in which Soviet female snipers were called subhuman and monsters. Priests blessed the holy war against the Bolshevik Amazons, but nothing helped. Fear was stronger than propaganda. Dr. Otto Krebs, who studied the impact of sniper terror on troops, noted, "Female snipers have the most demoralizing effect. Soldiers perceive death at their hands as humiliation, which seriously undermines morale." The Wehrmacht command was forced to change tactics. Orders prohibited soldiers from appearing alone in areas where Soviet snipers were active. Additional camouflage measures were introduced, and the time spent in frontline positions was limited. General Heinz Guderian admitted in his memoirs, "Russian female snipers became a real scourge for our troops. They sowed panic, not only among the soldiers, but also among the officers. Many asked to be transferred to other sections of the front. The fear reached such a level that the Germans began to refuse to take female snipers prisoner. Too many of their comrades had died at the hands of women. The orders from the command were categorical. Do not take female snipers prisoner. Destroy them on the spot." This decision had the opposite effect. Knowing that they would face certain death if captured, Soviet women fought with redoubled ferocity. They preferred to die in battle than fall into enemy hands. This further increased their combat effectiveness. Feldwebel Alfred Schmidt wrote, "Russian women do not surrender. Even when surrounded, they shoot until their last bullet. I saw one blow herself up with a grenade when we approached her position. She was not a woman. She was some kind of demon." The German press tried to hush up the issue of female snipers, but soldiers wrote home and told their stories when they were on leave. Gradually, word spread in Germany about the Russian Amazons, who were giving the valiant Wehrmacht a hard time. Goebbels was forced to issue instructions to newspapers. Write about Russian female snipers as fanatics, brainwashed by Bolshevik propaganda, emphasize their cruelty and inhumanity. But even this did not solve the problem of fear in the trenches. Fear of Soviet female snipers became one of the factors that undermined the morale of the German troops. Soldiers accustomed to easy victories in Europe were confronted with an enemy they did not understand and could not defeat by conventional means. This fear haunted the Germans until the very end of the war. Even in the last days of the Battle of Berlin, Wehrmacht soldiers spoke with horror of Russian female snipers who appeared out of nowhere and disappeared, leaving behind another victim. She was only 19 when she received her first sniper rifle. Aliya Moldagulova was a girl from the Kazakh steppe who became one of the most effective snipers in the Red Army and the youngest hero of the Soviet Union among female snipers. Aliya was born on October 25, 1944, in the village of Bulak, Kodinsky district, Aktober region. She was orphaned at an early age and raised in an orphanage in Almaty. She went to school and dreamed of becoming a doctor, but the war changed all her plans. When the Great Patriotic War began, Aliya was 16 years old. She wanted to go to the front, but she was not accepted because of her age. She had to wait 2 years until she turned 18. And in October 1942, she finally entered the Central Women's Sniper Training School. The instructors immediately noticed the thin Kazakh girl with piercing eyes. She had phenomenal eyesight. She could distinguish the smallest details at distances that were inaccessible to others. In addition, the girl possessed absolute calmness and iron self-control. Within 6 months of training, Aliya became one of the best cadets. Not only was she an excellent shot, but she also showed remarkable skills in camouflage. Her slender build allowed her to sneak into places where even an adult man could not hide. In May 1943, Aliya was sent to the front as part of the 54th Rifle Regiment of the 22nd Rifle Division. This was the Kalinin Front, one of the most active sectors of the Soviet-German confrontation. Aliya fired her first shot in combat on May 28, 1943. Her target was a German officer directing artillery fire. The distance was 400 meters. The bullet hit its target. Thus began the combat career of the 19-year-old sniper. In 8 months on the front lines, Aliya killed 91 enemy soldiers and officers. Among her victims were many snipers, machine gunners, and spotters. Each of her shots saved the lives of dozens of Soviet soldiers. Commanders noted the young sniper's unique style of work. She was extremely cautious, never rushed, and could wait for hours for the right moment. At the same time, Aliya had remarkable intuition. She could sense danger seconds before it appeared. Her comrades in arms called her the Step Cat for her ability to move silently and appear where she was least expected. Aliya could get so close to enemy positions that she could hear the German soldiers talking. But her youth made itself felt. Unlike her older comrades, Aliya sometimes took risks in an effort to prove herself. This worried her commanders, but it was impossible to stop the brave girl. On January 14, 1944, Aliya's regiment took part in an offensive operation in the Kazachika area of the Novgorod region. The task was difficult: to drive the Germans out of their well-fortified positions. Aliya was ordered to cover the advance of the rifle units. The battle began in the morning. Aliya took up a position in a ruined house and began methodically shooting enemy machine gunners. Her accurate shots allowed the infantry to advance, but the Germans quickly spotted the sniper's nest and began a massive barrage. A shell hit the house where Aliya was hiding. The girl was seriously wounded by shrapnel, but continued to shoot. When the Germans counterattacked, she stood up to her full height and opened fire with her submachine gun, covering the retreat of her comrades. Aliya Moldagulova died in that battle. She was only 19 years and 2.5 months old. In less than 8 months on the front lines, she killed 91 enemies and saved the lives of hundreds of Soviet soldiers. But Aliya was not the only young heroine. Rosa Igorovna Shanina went to the front at the age of 20. This girl from a village near Arkhangelsk became one of the most effective snipers in the Red Army. Before the war, Rosa studied at a teacher training college and dreamed of becoming a teacher. But when her brother was killed, she dropped out of school and joined the army. In just over a year of fighting, she killed 59 enemy soldiers and officers. Zoya Anatolievna Medvedeva went to the front at the age of 18, straight from her student desk. This girl from Leningrad defended her native city throughout the blockade. Her combat record was 37 enemies killed. The young female snipers were distinguished by their exceptional courage and self-sacrifice. They knew no fear, did not think about death, and devoted themselves entirely to serving their homeland. Their youth and beauty contrasted with their deadly skill. The Germans were horrified to discover that they were being killed by girls who should have been playing with dolls, not holding rifles. This demoralized the enemy psychologically no less than their own losses. These young heroines proved that age is no barrier to heroism. In their hands, weapons became instruments of just retribution. They avenged their murdered brothers, their burned homes, and their ruined childhoods. History has preserved the names of many young female snipers. Each of them represents a life cut short, dreams unfulfilled, but also a great feat in the name of victory. They appeared out of nowhere, like ghosts. They struck with precision and disappeared, melting into the forests and swamps. Female snipers in partisan detachments became a real nightmare for German garrisons in the occupied territories. Partisan warfare required special qualities: endurance, cunning, and the ability to survive in extreme conditions. Female snipers proved to be ideally suited for such combat. They were patient, cautious, and able to remain undetected for long periods of time. Ekaterina Ilyina Zelenaya was a legendary sniper in the Voroshilov partisan detachment in Belarus. Before the war, she worked as a teacher in a rural school. But when the Germans occupied her district, she took up a rifle and went into the forest. Her partisan name was Tishina, silence. Ekaterina could get so close to German posts that she could hear the whispers of the sentries. With a single shot, she would kill her target and disappear without a trace. In 2 years of partisan warfare, she killed 120 enemies. Working behind enemy lines was incredibly difficult. Female snipers had to live in dugouts, eat whatever the forest provided, and go without seeing the sun for months on end. They froze in winter, got soaked in the rain, and suffered from mosquitoes and gnats in summer. But the worst thing was the constant danger. The Germans dealt mercilessly with partisans, especially female snipers. Being captured meant certain death after brutal torture. Therefore, every female partisan always kept her last bullet for herself. Zoya Kosmodemyanskaya, who became a symbol of the partisan resistance, was not only a scout, but also a sniper. Before being captured, she killed 7 German soldiers and officers using a captured rifle with an optical sight. Partisan female snipers used special tactics. They did not seek to kill large numbers of enemies. The main thing was to achieve maximum psychological effect. One accurate shot at the right time could disrupt an entire enemy operation. Maria Kislak, who fought in the Bryansk forests, developed a tactic of surprise attack. She studied the routes of German patrols and chose ambush sites so that she could escape unnoticed after firing. During a year of such warfare, she killed 43 enemies. Female snipers were particularly effective in guarding partisan bases. They set up ambushes on the approaches to the camps, destroyed enemy scouts, and thwarted surprise attacks. Their vigilance saved dozens of units from defeat. Valentina Safronova spent 3 months alone guarding a partisan hospital in the Pskov forests. The Germans repeatedly tried to locate and destroy the medical base, but each time they encountered the accurate fire of an invisible sniper. During this time, she killed 18 enemy soldiers. The female partisans maintained contact with the mainland via radio. They received orders from the command, reported on the results of operations, and transmitted intelligence. Each message could cost lives if the Germans detected the transmitter. Nina Kornova worked as both a radio operator and a sniper. During the day, she observed the enemy, and at night, she communicated with Moscow. In a year and a half of such double duty, she transmitted more than 300 valuable reports to the center and destroyed 52 enemies. Female snipers were actively involved in sabotage operations. They covered demolition teams, destroyed guards at strategic facilities, and thwarted enemy attempts to repair damaged communications. Alexandra Gavrilova specialized in operations against rail transport. She eliminated enemy train drivers, guards on railway bridges, and signalmen at stations. Thanks to her actions, traffic was disrupted on several sections of the Minsk-Warsaw Road. Operations in cities were particularly dangerous. Female snipers infiltrated occupied settlements disguised as refugees or local residents. They set up ambushes in the streets, shot from windows of houses, and disappeared into the crowd after firing. Elena Mazarova worked in occupied Orel for 6 months. Officially, she was listed as a cleaner at the German commandant's office, but in reality she was a sniper in an underground group. During this time, she eliminated 11 important enemy officers and Gestapo agents. The Germans made desperate attempts to fight the female guerrilla snipers. Large-scale operations were carried out to comb the forests. Special sniper hunting teams were created, and service dogs were brought in. But the women proved to be more resourceful. They learned to throw dogs off the trail, create false trails, and use natural cover so that even experienced trackers could not detect them. The forest became their ally and protector. Female guerrilla snipers made an invaluable contribution to the overall victory. They not only destroyed enemies, but also supported the morale of the local population, showing that the resistance was continuing. Their exploits inspired others to fight against the occupiers. Behind every accurate shot was a human life. Behind every victory was pain, suffering, and loss. Female snipers paid the highest price for their deadly accuracy, their health, mental stability, and often their lives. Injuries were a constant companion for female snipers. Working on the front lines, long hours in uncomfortable positions and constant tension all took their toll on their health. By the end of the war, there was not a single female sniper who had not been wounded. Lyudmila Pavlichenko was wounded 4 times during her service. Her last wound, caused by a mine fragment near Sevastopol, was so severe that doctors fought for her life for a long time. The fragments remained in her body forever, causing her pain until the end of her days. But physical wounds healed. Emotional wounds were much more difficult to bear. Murder, even in war, even of an enemy, leaves a mark on the human psyche. For women, who are by nature more sensitive, this was especially difficult. Klavdia Kalugina recalled, "After I killed my first German, I couldn't eat for 3 days. I kept seeing his face and hearing his scream." The commander said, "You'll get used to it." But you can't get used to killing. You can only learn to live with it. Many female snipers suffered from nightmares. They dreamed of the faces of their dead enemies and heard their voices. Some began to fear the dark. Others could not stand loud noises. The war left invisible scars on their souls. Nina Petrova, the oldest of the female snipers, tried to help the young girls cope with their psychological problems. I told them, "We're not killing people. We're killing fascism. Every shot we fire saves dozens of innocent lives." The loss of comrades was perhaps the most traumatic experience. Female snipers often worked in pairs and became close friends. The death of a partner was not just a combat loss, but a personal tragedy. After the death of Natalya Kovshova, Maria Polivanova was in shock for several days. She refused to eat, did not speak to anyone, just sat and stared at one spot. Only an order from her commander forced her to pick up her rifle and continue the war. The girls were particularly affected by the deaths of civilians. They fought to protect children, women, and the elderly. But war is war, and sometimes it was impossible to save everyone. Zoya Medvedeva witnessed the mass shooting of civilians in a village near Leningrad. She could have shot several Germans, but that would not have saved the others, only hastened the massacre. All her life she was tormented by the thought, what if she could have done something? Female snipers risked their lives not only on the battlefield. Their gender made them particularly vulnerable if captured. The Germans did not recognize them as soldiers, considered them terrorists, and treated them with particular cruelty. Anna Morozova was captured and seriously wounded near Stalingrad. The Germans subjected her to brutal torture, demanding that she reveal the location of other snipers. The girl did not say a word and was shot. Her body was found by Soviet intelligence officers 3 days later. Constant stress, malnutrition, and lack of normal conditions for rest undermined the sniper's health. By the end of the war, Many of them looked much older than their years. The war stole their youth and beauty. In her last letters home, Rosa Shanina complained of constant fatigue. "Mom, I'm so tired of the war. I just want to lie down and sleep for a month, but I can't. The enemy has not yet been defeated, and there is a lot of work to do." Some female snipers could not withstand the psychological strain and asked to be transferred to other services. They were transferred to medical battalions, communications units, and anti-aircraft units. No one condemned them. Every person has their limits, but most continued to fight to the end. They knew that their ability to kill enemies saved the lives of their comrades. This knowledge gave them the strength to endure all the hardships of war. Medical assistance for female snipers was often unavailable. In field conditions, it was not always possible to provide qualified assistance for injuries. Many girls died from blood loss or infections. Valentina Kozlova was wounded in the stomach during a battle near Kursk. The nearest medical unit was 15 kilometers away. Her comrades carried her in their arms all night, but they were unable to save her. The girl died in the arms of a nurse, never making it to surgery. Disability became the lot of many female snipers. Amputated limbs, internal injuries, partial or complete loss of vision, the war left indelible scars. Inna Mudretsova lost her left arm in a grenade explosion. Doctors said she could forget about sniper shooting. But the girl learned to shoot with one hand and continued to fight until Victory Day. The price of accuracy was high, but female snipers paid it without hesitation. They knew that their sacrifices were not in vain, that their pain and suffering were bringing victory closer, and this knowledge gave them the strength to go on until the end. The Geneva Convention prescribed humane treatment of prisoners of war, but these rules did not apply to Soviet female snipers. The Germans did not consider them soldiers, calling them subhuman, bandits, and terrorists. They faced not just death, but sophisticated torture and humiliation. The archives contain Wehrmacht documents attesting to special orders regarding female snipers. A directive dated July 23, 1942 stated, "Do not take Russian women with weapons into captivity. Shoot them on the spot as terrorists." But the reality was even worse than the dry lines of the orders. The Germans, embittered by heavy losses from sniper fire, took out their anger on the girls who were captured. What they had to endure was beyond imagination. Zinaida Portnova was captured by the Gestapo in occupied Belarus. The 18-year-old girl was subjected to horrific torture, demanding that she reveal her comrades in the underground. Her eyes were gouged out and her ears were cut off, but she did not say a word. Post-war investigation documents contain horrific details of the reprisals against female snipers. They were not simply killed, they were tortured, humiliated, and their deaths turned into a spectacle to intimidate the local population. Liza Chaikina, a partisan detachment commissar and sniper, was captured by punitive forces in November 1941. Before her execution, the Germans forced her to walk through the village with a sign saying, "I am a partisan," and then publicly hanged her in front of the residence. The SS and field gendarmerie units were particularly cruel. These units specialized in fighting partisans and considered female snipers their main enemies. Falling into their hands meant certain and painful death. Anna Morozova was captured by the SS near Stalingrad. According to witnesses, she was tortured for 3 days and demanded to reveal the positions of other snipers. The girl did not utter a word, even when her executioners used red-hot rods. German soldiers justified their cruelty by saying that female snipers were waging an unfair war. They believed that shooting from ambush, camouflage, and using improvised means to kill were not war, but banditry. Oberleutnant Kurt Meyer wrote in a letter home, "Russian women fight like wild animals. They have no concept of honor. They shoot from ambush like murderers. There is only one way to deal with such people: Goebbels' propaganda portrayed Soviet female snipers as subhumans, Bolshevik Amazons, and tools of the Jewish conspiracy. This demonization justified any atrocities committed against female prisoners. The newspaper Der Stürmer published an article entitled "Russian Witches," in which Soviet female snipers were described as spawn of hell, who drink the blood of Aryan heroes. Such propaganda fueled hatred and cruelty. Some German officers tried to protect female prisoners, citing international law. But their voices were drowned out by calls for revenge. The war in the East had long since ceased to be civilized. Colonel Werner Molders, one of the few who tried to observe the conventions, wrote in his diary, "What we are doing to Russian women casts a shadow on the honor of German officers. But orders are orders. Female snipers knew what awaited them if they were captured. That is why many of them always kept their last bullet for themselves. Suicide was preferable to a shameful death at the hands of their executioners. Maria Polivanova and Natalya Kovshova chose death by their own grenades when they realized that resistance was futile. They preferred to die as heroes rather than become victims of German sadists. Cases where female snipers were captured alive were rare. Most of them fought to the last bullet and then killed themselves. It was not an act of despair, but of courage. Valentina Safronova blew herself up with a grenade when the Germans surrounded her position. In her suicide note, she wrote, "Better to die free than live in humiliation. Avenge us." The Germans' cruelty towards female snipers had the opposite effect. Upon learning of the atrocities committed against their comrades, other female snipers fought with redoubled fury. Revenge became an additional incentive for accurate shooting. Lyudmila Pavlichenko, upon learning of the execution of her sniper friend, vowed to kill 10 Germans for each comrade who had been tortured, and she kept her vow. Her combat record skyrocketed after receiving the terrible news. The inhuman cruelty of the Germans became one of the factors that united Soviet women. They understood that this was a war of annihilation, where there would be no mercy. All that remained was to fight to the bitter end. History has preserved the names of many tortured female snipers. Their feat consisted not only in their marksmanship, but also in the fact that they did not break under torture, did not betray their comrades, and remained loyal to the end. The memory of their suffering became sacred to the survivors. After the war, veteran female snipers always remembered their fallen friends, talked about their courage, and passed on the torch of memory to new generations. Their letters home were full of things left unsaid. Military censorship did not allow them to write the truth about the war. But between the lines, pain, fatigue, and longing for a peaceful life shone through. The diaries and memoirs of female snipers are invaluable testimonies of an era, the voices of those who went through the hell of war. Rosa Shanina kept a diary from her first day at the front. Her entries are a chronicle of the war through the eyes of a 20-year-old girl who, in the space of a year, went from being a student at a teacher training college to one of the Red Army's best snipers. April 15, 1944. Today I killed my first German. The distance was 400 meters. I hit him right in the heart. Strange, but I feel no joy. It's just my job, to kill the enemies of my homeland. In her letters home, Rosa was more reserved. Dear Mom, everything is fine with me. I am serving honestly and doing my duty. Soon we will defeat the fascists and return home. I kiss you tightly. Your daughter, Rosa. There is a huge gap between her personal notes and official letters. Her diary reveals the truth of war, while her letters are an attempt to reassure her family and prevent them from understanding what their daughter is going through. In her memoirs, Ludmila Pavlichenko recalled the letters from the front. It was impossible to write the truth. How could I tell my mother that her daughter was killing people every day? How could I explain that war is not heroic deeds but dirt, blood, and death? Aliya Moldagulova wrote to the boarding school where she was raised, My dear ones, I am fighting for you, for all Soviet children. Every shot I fire is a step toward the day when you will live without fear. Study hard and grow up to be good people. The diaries of female snipers reflect not only combat episodes, but also ordinary human life. Dreams of peace, memories of home, thoughts about the future. The war could not kill the woman in them. Nina Petrova wrote, "I dreamed of home. My mother was baking pies, my father was reading the newspaper, and the cat was purring by the stove. I woke up to an explosion. The Germans were shelling our positions. When will this nightmare end?" Reflections on the meaning of war, life, and death occupy a special place in the diaries. Faced with the reality of war, young girls quickly grew up and became philosophers by necessity. Klavdia Kalugina wrote, "I killed a German boy today. He was probably about 18. They found a photograph in his pocket. He was hugging a girl. She probably loved him and was waiting for him to come home. But he'll never come back. Because of me." The letters between female sniper friends were particularly candid. There was no room for posturing or false heroism, only the truth, bitter, cruel, but necessary for survival. Maria Polivanova wrote to Natalya Kovshova, "Natashka, I was almost killed today. The German sniper was better than me, only chance saved me. I'm afraid I'll never see my home again, but we'll fight to the end." The women snipers' notes also reflected the daily life of war. Trenches, dugouts, lice, hunger, cold, all the things that were not written about in the newspapers, but were the everyday reality of life at the front. Zoya Medvedeva wrote, "We haven't been able to wash for 3 days. The lice are biting us all over. We get 100 grams of bread a day. It's good that I learned to eat sorrel and nettles. At least we get some vitamins." Particularly touching are the entries about camaraderie and friendship born in the fire of war. Female snipers supported each other not only in battle, but also in moments of emotional weakness. Inna Mudritsova wrote, "Yesterday Katya cried. She received a letter saying that her mother had died. We all collected money and sent a parcel to her younger sisters. In war, we are all one family." In their letters home, the women often asked for simple things: soap, thread, paper for writing. These little things from peacetime were worth their weight in gold at the front. Valentina Kozlova wrote to her mother, "Mommy, if you can, send me a needle and thread. My leotard is completely worn out, and I have nothing to mend it with. And also, if you can find one, send me a small mirror. I want to look at myself at least sometimes." The diaries were interrupted during particularly heavy fighting. Weeks and even months passed without any entries. Then a short line would appear. "Alive, fighting. There are many Germans, but we are beating them." The last entries of many female snipers are full of foreboding. It is as if they sensed the approach of death and hurried to leave their last words for posterity. The day before she died, Rosa Shanina wrote, "I feel that something is about to happen. If I don't return, know that I died for a just cause. Avenge me, comrades." After the war, these entries became priceless documents of the era. They tell the truth about the war, not the official, polished version, but the human one. The truth about the girls who took up rifles and went to defend their homeland. The voices from the front have not fallen silent today. They echo from the pages of diaries, letters, and memoirs. They remind us of the price of victory, and that war is always a tragedy, even when fought for a just cause. Vera Krylova fought for 3 months in the Odessa catacombs. The underground labyrinths became her home and fortress. Here, in complete darkness, she learned to shoot by ear, determining the location of the enemy by the sound of their breathing. In urban combat, female snipers often served in assault groups. They covered the advance of the infantry, destroyed enemy machine gunners, and cleared the way to important targets. Each of their shots saved dozens of their comrades' lives. Lena Golikova took part in the storming of Königsberg. Her task was to destroy German snipers entrenched in the towers of the cathedral. For 4 days, she fought a duel with 3 experienced enemy marksmen. She won. All 3 Germans were killed. Female snipers played a special role in the defense of key facilities, factories, bridges, administrative buildings, all became their battlefield. They knew every corner, every hiding place, every loophole. Zinaida Martinova defended Pavlov's house in Stalingrad for 120 days. Her position was on the 4th floor, overlooking the square of the 9th of January. During the defense, she killed 28 German soldiers. Urban snipers actively used a system of underground passages and tunnels. This allowed them to appear in the most unexpected places, strike and hide, without giving the enemy a chance to return fire. Anna Egorova created a whole network of underground passages between houses in Sevastopol. Using sewer pipes and basements, she could move from one end of the district to the other in half an hour, remaining invisible to the enemy. The psychological impact of the city's female snipers on the enemy was enormous. German soldiers were afraid to show themselves on the streets, preferring to move only through underground passages. Entire neighborhoods turned into dead zones. Oberleutnant Klaus Fischer reported to the command, "Advancing through the city is extremely difficult due to the activity of Russian snipers. We have lost 15 men in 3 days." The soldiers refused to patrol the streets during the day. Female snipers also took part in night operations. Under cover of darkness, they infiltrated enemy lines, ambushed ammunition supply routes, and eliminated couriers and signalmen. Maria Kuzmina specialized in night hunting in Leningrad. Using her knowledge of the city, she infiltrated German positions and carried out precision strikes. During the winter of 1941-1942, she killed 32 enemies. Female snipers were particularly effective in storming fortified buildings. Their smaller stature and weight allowed them to squeeze through narrow openings, climb damaged staircases, and take up positions in hard-to-reach places. Valentina Gavrilova was the first to break into the German commandant's building in Orel. Climbing onto the roof via a fire escape, she killed 4 guards and signaled to the assault team. The building was taken in half an hour. Urban combat required not only accuracy, but also physical endurance. They had to lie in uncomfortable positions for hours, climb over ruins, and carry heavy equipment. The women coped with this no worse than the men. Nina Sokolova fought in Berlin during the last days of the war. Her position was in the ruins of the Reich Chancellery, from where she covered the advance of assault groups toward Hitler's bunker. She fired the last shot of the war on May 7, 1945. Urban snipers often witnessed historic events. They saw the symbols of Nazism collapse, concentration camps liberated, and Allied troops meet on the Elbe. Rosa Sakyan was among the first to see the flag over the Reichstag. From the roof of a ruined house, she watched as the red banner rose above the lair of the fascist beast. "At that moment I realized that the war was over," she recalled. The battle for the cities demonstrated the versatility of female snipers. They were equally effective in all conditions, in the steppes and forests, in the mountains and cities. Their skill, courage, and self-sacrifice became legendary. After the war, many female snipers participated in the reconstruction of destroyed cities. They helped build new houses on the ruins where they had once hunted their enemies. By the end of 1943, the initiative in the war had finally passed to the Red Army. Soviet troops drove the invaders from their native land, liberated the occupied territories, and advanced toward the borders of the Reich. Female snipers also took part in this victorious march. The liberation of every city and every village was a personal victory for them. They saw what the occupiers had brought to Soviet soil: destroyed houses, burned schools, and shot civilians. This gave their shots extra accuracy. Lyudmila Pavlichenko, who was no longer fighting on the front lines due to her injuries, met with the liberated residents of Ukraine. "When I saw the tears of joy on people's faces, I understood that every shot I fired near Sevastopol was not in vain," she recalled. Female snipers participated in the liberation of Belarus, the Baltic states, and Poland. Everywhere they were greeted as heroines, saviors from the fascist yoke. The local population helped them, pointed out enemy positions, and hid them from persecution. Zoya Medvedeva fought as part of a group of troops liberating the Leningrad region. For her, every village that was liberated was a return to life. "We weren't just driving the Germans out," she said. "We were giving people their homes back." As the war progressed westward, its nature changed. The Germans were retreating, but they were putting up desperate resistance. Every line became a fortress, every city a hotbed of resistance. Snipers were needed more than ever. Inna Mudretsova took part in the breakthrough of the Eastern Wall, a powerful system of German fortifications. Her task was to eliminate observers and fire correctors. In a week of fighting, she killed 12 important targets. The battles in East Prussia were particularly fierce. Here, the Germans were defending their own land and fought with particular ferocity. Every house and every hill became a bloody battlefield. Alla Zaitseva fought near Königsberg. The assault on this fortress was one of the most difficult operations of the war. The Germans turned the city into an impregnable stronghold, but Soviet troops broke the resistance in 4 days. Female snipers were the first to set foot on German soil. For many of them, it was a moment of personal revenge. They remembered the destroyed cities, their murdered relatives, and their tortured friends. But their revenge was cold and professional. Tamara Kostarina crossed the German border on January 21, 1945. "I thought I would hate this land," she recalled, "but then I saw German women with children running from the war, and I realized that ordinary people are the same everywhere." In Germany, the female snipers encountered a new phenomenon: mass desertion among German soldiers. Many enemies did not want to die in the last days of the war and surrendered at the first opportunity. Vera Artemyeva recalled, "I tracked down a German officer for 3 days. When I got within firing range, I saw him raising a white flag. I didn't shoot. The war was over. There was no point in killing someone who was surrendering." The last months of the war were particularly tense. Everyone understood that victory was close, but they still had to survive. Every day could be their last. Every operation could be fatal. Rosa Shanina died in January 1945 in East Prussia, 4 months before Victory Day. In her last letter, she wrote, "I feel that I will not live to see the end of the war, but I know that we will win." The storming of Berlin was the crowning achievement of the military careers of many female snipers. They stormed the lair of the fascist beast, took part in the last battles of the war, and witnessed Germany's surrender. Klavdia Kalugina reached the Reichstag. Her last shot was fired on May 1, 1945, at a German sniper holed up in the Imperial Chancellery. A week later, the war was over. On May 9, 1945, female snipers were in different parts of Europe. Some were in Berlin, some in Prague, some in hospitals. But they all knew that their war had ended in victory. Nina Petrova celebrated Victory Day in a military hospital in Königsberg. "I was lying there wounded and listening to the fireworks," she recalled. "I thought about my friends who had died. We had won, but at what cost?" The statistics were impressive. Female snipers of the Red Army killed more than 12,000 enemy soldiers and officers. That is more than some divisions lost during the entire war. But the main thing was not the numbers. The main thing was that these girls showed the whole world what Soviet women were capable of. They proved that the weaker sex can be stronger than the most hardened warriors when it comes to defending their homeland. The road to victory was long and bloody. But these amazing women with rifles in their hands went all the way to the end. Their names are forever inscribed in the history of the Great Patriotic War. The war ended, but for female snipers, another battle began. For a place in the post-war world. A society accustomed to seeing women as mothers and guardians of the hearth found it difficult to accept those who had learned to kill. Many preferred to remain silent about their past on the front lines. After the war, Lyudmila Pavlichenko graduated from the History Department of Kiev University and worked for the War Veterans Committee. But even she, the most famous of the female snipers, rarely spoke about her war years. The memories were too painful. People wanted to forget the war, Lyudmila Mikhailovna said in one of her rare interviews. And we were a living reminder of that time. That's why many of us preferred to remain silent. Official recognition did not come immediately. In the early post-war years, tankers, pilots, and artillerymen were glorified. Less was said about snipers, especially female snipers. Their work seemed too specific, too cruel. It was not until the 1960s that the memory of female snipers began to be truly immortalized. Books were published, films were made, and museum exhibitions were opened. Society finally understood the scale of the feat of these amazing women. Aliya Moldagulova was posthumously awarded the title of Hero of the Soviet Union on June 4, 1944. She became the youngest female sniper to receive this honor. In her native Kazakhstan, streets and schools have been named after Aliya, and monuments have been erected in her honor. Maria Polivanova and Natalya Kovshova were awarded the title of Hero on February 14, 1943. Their feat, their joint heroic death, became a symbol of frontline friendship and self-sacrifice. Rosa Shanina was awarded the title of Hero only in 1965, 20 years after her death. Her diary, published in the 1970s, became one of the most poignant documents about the war. The memory of female snipers was preserved not only in official awards. War veterans remembered their saviors and told their children and grandchildren about the girls with rifles who covered them in battle. Ivan Petrovich Sidorov, who fought at Stalingrad, remembered the sniper Katya, who saved his life until the end of his life. A German machine gunner pinned us to the ground. We were lying there, unable to lift our heads. And suddenly, the machine gun fell silent. Katya had taken him out with a sniper shot. Museums began to collect exhibits related to female snipers. Rifles, letters, photographs, diaries, all became part of historical memory. The personal belongings of the fallen heroines were especially valuable. The Central Museum of the Great Patriotic War has Lyudmila Pavlichenko's rifle with 300 notches on the butt, one for each enemy she killed. Next to it are her letters home, full of longing for a peaceful life. Literature and cinema gradually began to explore the theme of female snipers. Boris Vasilyev's novels and films about the war all helped to shape the image of women warriors in the public consciousness. The film The Dawns Here Are Quiet showed women in war not as an exception, but as a norm. Millions of viewers saw that Soviet women fought on equal terms with men and were no less courageous than them. School museums of military glory began to create exhibitions about female snipers. Pioneers and Komsomol members searched for veterans, recorded their memories, and collected documents and photographs. Tamara Petrovna Kostirina, who lived to be 90, regularly visited schools to tell children about the war. I told them that we didn't fight because we loved to kill. We were protecting you, the future generations. Monuments to female snipers have appeared in many cities. In Sevastopol, a monument has been erected to all the women who defended the city. In Almaty, there is a monument to Aliya Moldagulova. In Arkhangelsk, there is one to Rosa Shanina. Each of these monuments is not just a tribute to a specific person, but a symbol of recognition of the feat of all Soviet female snipers. They symbolize that their sacrifices have not been forgotten. The orders and medals of many fallen female snipers are kept by their relatives. These awards are passed down from generation to generation, as sacred objects, as reminders of the family's heroic past. Zoya Medvedeva's granddaughter, a teacher by profession, says, "My grandmother's medals are our family heirlooms. I show them to my students and tell them about the war. Children need to know the price we paid for victory." Researchers continue to study the history of female snipers. New documents are being discovered. The memories of the last veterans are being recorded, and the biographies of these heroines are being refined. Elena Senyavskaya, a candidate of historical sciences, notes, "The topic of female snipers was taboo for a long time. Now we understand that it was a unique phenomenon unparalleled in world history." International recognition has also come to Soviet female snipers. Western researchers acknowledge their outstanding contribution to the victory over fascism and study their tactics and combat methods. Yale University professor Lyra Kershaw writes, "Soviet female snipers shattered stereotypes about the role of women in war. They proved that gender is no barrier to military skill. The memory of these heroines lives on in folk traditions. On Victory Day, veterans and their descendants carry portraits of fallen female snipers as part of the Immortal Regiment. Their faces look down at us from old photographs, reminding us of the price of freedom. Every May 9, people bring flowers to the graves of female snipers. They are visited by those whom they protected, the children and grandchildren of the people they saved. They are visited by grateful descendants. At the Piskarevsky Cemetery in Leningrad, where many defenders of the city are buried, there are graves of female snipers. In spring, there are always fresh flowers here, a reminder of those who did not live to see peace. The story of the female snipers of the Red Army is not just a page in military history. It is a lesson in courage, self-sacrifice, and love for the motherland. A lesson that is relevant at all times. Their feat will remain in the memory of the people forever. As long as Russia lives, the girls with rifles who became the terror of their enemies and the pride of their compatriots will be remembered.